Okay, welcome to Divorce Periscope. My name's Matt Pilisher, and I'm with the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And we do these broadcasts on the Periscope app the first and third Wednesday of every month. Hello, if you're just tuning in. We rotate between different topics, talking about divorce and children, divorce and finances, divorce and taking care of yourself, wellness, and we have different expert guests that come on the show. So tonight we're happy to have Steve Erfle, who's a certified financial planner and also a certified divorce financial analyst. And Steve counsels individuals and families in all facets of financial planning. This includes investment management, divorce planning, retirement planning, philanthropic planning, risk management, and estate planning. Steve is passionate about helping his clients go from confused and overwhelmed to confident and in control. And that resonates very much with the clients we have at Alpha Center, people going from very confused and overwhelmed to confident and in control. So Steve, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, if I didn't catch anything there, and sort of how your practice relates to divorce?
Sure. So the evolution of financial planning, it used to be you have a stockbroker or an insurance agent, but things have really changed. A lot of what Matt just described of what we do now is kind of directed from the consumer. It's what clients are asking for. They don't want a simple transaction anymore. They want to have a relationship, somebody that can actually help them with their financial life. So it's not siloed like it used to be. So the new age, I guess we call ourselves financial planners now. I'm not sure. The name has changed a lot. But the new age and the new direction and offering is to help people with their entire life. And that involves more than just the insurance and the investments. You have to help them with estate planning, college planning, tax management. You have to do a lot of tax planning. And that requires working with a lot of other professionals as well on the client's behalf. We tend to be the quarterback to, be the lead with the clients because we have a very strong relationship. And then we'll bring in, or the clients have other professionals, and we'll work together as a team on their behalf. So a far cry from the transactional relationship that the industry started from.
If you're just joining us, this is Divorce Periscope, and we're talking about finances and divorce with Steve Erfle. So how do you work with clients? You talked about it broadly, but I guess more specifically, when they're married, what does it look like to work with a couple in sort of this holistic planning? And then also, how does it look when they're going through divorce? I know in some cases you're doing amicable divorces, so you're working with both people, but a lot of times it's not. And so how does it change, married and divorced?
So the culture in our firm is that we only work with the husband and wife for the married section. I'll talk about divorce in a minute. But I think that's really important because you have two voices, and it's a forum for them to actually talk about things that they don't talk about. You're busy, you're working, you're chasing kids around, there's bills to pay. So a lot of times when they sit down with us, it's the first time that they can actually talk about these financial matters. And it's surprising. Sometimes you see their faces, maybe they're rolling their eyes at times, or they're kind of, surprised at what they heard. But it's a really healthy conversation. And a lot of times what I try to do is sit directly across from, I'll say, the person that is not the financial person in the house, to make them feel comfortable, to get them involved, to ask them questions, because it is a partnership. And really, you want to break down the barrier of that delegation that, he or she handles all the bills and the finances. Well, that's not really acceptable anymore in today's age. So the purpose of, the married couple is we're giving them a forum to talk. We're bringing them together. They're talking about things they don't typically talk about, and it's a comfortable environment. it's funny, we're going to be talking a lot about divorce, but one of the top reasons people get divorced is finances.
Right.
So, we're not advocates for divorce, but it's a fact of life and it happens. But I think some married couples can really benefit from that type of environment.
That's great. I mean, I didn't picture it like that you're creating a forum. It sounds like you try and make it as safe as possible for the person that isn't as up on education on their investments and finances. Yeah, you're right. I mean, finances is, I think, the number one reason, the number one stressor on marriages. So then, what does it look like when you're working with people going through divorce? I know it could be many different things, but
Yeah, so it happens, right? It's a high rate, at least 50%. I think the number may change from year to year. Typically, I think, and it's my opinion, it's best for us to have one party. We typically don't work with both parties. There's too much conflict of interest there. So one of the parties will engage us to help them through this life event that they're going through. And we'll work directly with that party. And one of the first things we're going to do is to put the emotion aside as much as we can. That's extremely challenging. That's where therapists get involved, and they really should have that outlet. They should voice their concerns to their therapist. Emotion and money are not a good mix. They're two ingredients that come together and it produces a really bad cake. It tastes horrible. So you have to take the emotion and you have to kind of try and set that aside. It's really hard. Emotions lead to every bad decision. I'll use a simple example, the stock market. When you're feeling really good about the stock market, it's generally the worst time to get in. And when you're feeling really bad, it's generally the best time to be invested. So emotions really have a strong play, and we have to work with our clients to put that aside, compartmentalize it. You can't get rid of it. It's going to be there. So we'll put that aside and then start gathering information. A lot of people either didn't handle it. Maybe, the husband or wife was the bill payer in the house. So we want to work with them to start gathering data, good data, tax returns, insurance statements, investment statements, mortgage statements, credit cards. So one of the things we do for that, we create a vault, an online vault. It's a secure Dropbox. A lot of people are familiar with Dropbox, sharing pictures with family members. So we use ShareFile. It's a vault. We create folders: estate planning, investments, tax, college, whatever it is. Then people will start to upload those documents to the vault. So it's the very beginning of an organization phase. I like to call it the get organized meeting. And we can use that vault and turn it on to attorneys, accountants. So the client now has this depository of information that all the professionals can view and share and work together in a collaborative type of environment. So those are really the early things that we do with people. And I think that's also one of the hardest things for people, is to start gathering that information. Matt and I have talked about this before. A lot of times people procrastinate here. They're not forthright with the information, mainly because a lot of times the emotion is there and they haven't fully expressed that emotion or gotten it out. So they're struggling with that, and they're going to have to give the information. Legally, they're going to have to give it. Sometimes they hold out and they get sick of paying, legal fees, so the information comes out. But eventually it's going to come out, and it's better to do that early in the process.
If you're just joining us, we are doing divorce and finances tonight on Divorce Periscope, and we encourage people to ask questions or make comments about finance as it relates to divorce. And we have a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst with us tonight, Steve Erfle. So let me ask you this. You said you try and separate the emotions, or have people separate the emotions. how do you approach people when they come to you and they're first starting divorce? How do you talk to them? Because I imagine your approach is holistic. It sounds very compassionate.
Hmm.
So will you sit down and kind of have a game plan with them for sort of where the whole divorce process is going and how you fit in, and talk to them about, we're going to be, quarterbacking on finances, but we don't want to have, if you're in a fit of rage, we don't want to be having a conversation about where we're putting the investments. I mean, what is sort of the way you
Yeah,
start that conversation?
for sure. One of the things we joke about in our industry is we're unlicensed psychologists at times, because there's so much emotion around money. And then at divorce, it's like putting gasoline on a fire. It really takes off. So I think one of the things we really do, like you said, is be compassionate. Tell them that this is normal. Show the facts. This is how many people are getting divorced. You're not alone. You didn't fail. This is just a fact of life, and this happens. So trying to get those barriers or let the guard down is really important in the beginning. But most people, they come and they're ready to go to work. They're ready to address this. And when they come in, we explain to them, look, this is a process. This is not a transaction. This is not going to be quick. It's going to take time. We're going to have 45-minute meetings. That's all you can handle right now. Let's slowly take you through the process. So, one of the things we do in that as well to help is, I read the other day that people understand graphics 700,000 times quicker than words. So trying to take these financial terms or the numbers that everybody has and get them in a graphic format is hugely valuable. And simplifying the financial side of this, because they have plenty of other things to think about right now, really helps that process.
That sounds great. I know at Alpha Center we try and do, when we're talking about dividing up the marital estate, we do mediation, so it's working with a couple together with a neutral mediator, and we'll have a screen where we'll have all the assets in a spreadsheet and see what it looks like, a live spreadsheet to start to break down, the overall marital estate, and it does sort of snap for certain people to see it rather than to just talk about it. So can you explain what Certified Divorce Financial Analyst is and what that certification, what the training's like?
Yeah, so a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst is a relatively newer designation, and it's governed by the Institute of Divorce Financial Analyst. And the designation is really in place for people that have clients going through divorce, and they want to know more about it to be able to help them. And that's kind of how I got started in this. I had a client that I've been working with since 2008. Unfortunately, they were getting divorced, and they came to me and they said, look, you know us best. You know our assets. You know our tax situation. We need your help. And it was kind of my first experience in this world, and I immediately went back and said, well, what's out there? There's probably designations, education, there's things I can do. So that's how I started the designation, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. It's made up of 4 modules, and they're tests, and you have to go to a testing center and you study for 3 to 6 months for each one. The first one's on the fundamentals of divorce, so understanding the landscape, who are the players in the legal system. And then it talks about the financial issues of divorce, and then the tax issues, which are also important. And then finally, there's a comprehensive case study. So basically, it's 4 different tests. Probably takes about a year and a half of studying to get. But I found it hugely valuable to understand because there's a lot of complexities in this world, as you very well know. And it was really good for me. And that part of our business has really prospered because there's a lot of people going through this event, and it's their biggest financial transaction they're going to make in their lifetime. and it has long-term ramifications. So it's really important to get it right,
Mm-hmm.
understand it's a process, take your time, and make good decisions.
Mm-hmm. So, so when you're working with a client going through divorce, it's sort of one strategy, I guess, getting through the divorce, and then afterwards you're kind of switching to a different mindset
Yeah.
sometimes. Is that right? That you would then sort of go back to, okay, you're your own person now.
Hmm.
What do you want to do with, your life? What's important? Or are
Yeah.
they more, are you doing that all at once? Like, can you do that
Hmm.
while a divorce is happening?
Yeah, there's only so much you can
Yeah,
tackle
yeah.
in this phase of their life, in this transition, I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, my primary goal is to help them through this divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, part of it is when you're talking about asset division or support, it's making sure that that's enough to last them their lifetime. So, you're starting to
Mm-hmm.
build that new life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's no doubt about this, it's a new life for both parties going through the divorce. So, probably in the middle-ish of the process, we start looking at that. So we use a tool, and again, we're graphic people. So we have a speedometer, and it gives you a score, 0 to 99. 99 being the highest score and 0 being the worst. So basically, we're giving you a grade on if you take this type of settlement,
Mm-hmm.
here's what the potential score is. But it's thinking about their life. It's got a lot of inputs behind the graphic.
Mm-hmm.
The graphic's just a speedometer, which is great because that's all the clients need to understand or want to
Mm-hmm.
think about at that time. But what's behind that is, their assets, their liabilities, what the support will be, Social Security, tax laws, assumptions on investment returns. So there's a lot behind that engine
Mm-hmm.
that we work with every client with. And a lot of times what's really helpful is to say, settlement option 1, here's your score. Settlement option 2, here's your score. Settlement option 3, here's your score. And it puts it in a simple format for
Mm-hmm.
people to help get through that and decide what's best for them.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about this a little bit, but maybe you have something else to add. What are some basic things that people should be mindful of as they're going through divorce in terms of their finances?
Yeah. I think early on, I'll talk about mistakes that people
Mm-hmm.
can make.
Yeah.
The first thing is to understand this is a process. There is no room for knee-jerk reactions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, the initial reaction of people is, I'm moving out of the house, I'm leaving. Well, that's not always the best thing to do. Frankly,
Mm-hmm.
it's not good at all because there's a lot of ramifications that Matt and legal will tell you that that could put yourself in a weaker position as you go to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing people do is they might run up credit card bills, or start moving money around.
Mm-hmm.
That's all going to be discoverable. So it's really a bad idea to make those quick decisions that might give you instant gratification, make you
Right.
feel better for the moment, but the reality is it's not helping the process at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think what's really important early on is to get some referrals from friends. As soon as you start talking about this stuff, people are open. They want to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have friends that have gone through this and they'll know a lawyer, a mediator, a therapist, a financial person. They'll have referrals for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you should start a list, start a journal,
Mm-hmm.
and start writing down those names. Go meet those people, interview them. A lot of this business comes down to personality. Is it a good fit? Can I see myself getting through this with this person?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about the data. Getting a really good data is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, getting the data before you go to meet anybody is hugely valuable. Too many people just go to hire somebody and they haven't done the legwork. And it's just going to cost you time and money and angst in the process. The other thing I'll say, which is important, is it is a team that you're building. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to draft a document.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to help you on the financial side. So you're going to need the financial planner. You're going to need the lawyer. or mediator, and we'll talk about that. And you're going to need a good accountant to help you through this, and therapists. So you're really building your team of support to help you through this. I typically tell people that this process doesn't have to be ugly. It really depends on the couple. But mediation's a really good place to start because it doesn't have to be a terrible process. You're going to have to come together to make decisions. So it's up to you when you want to do that. Some people have to go through the legal channels and have the fight, but they eventually always come back to saying, okay, I'm sick of paying bills. What's okay for us? Let's just hash this out and be done with it. It's not funny, but it's just the reality of this world is that everybody goes through that same cycle. In my experience. So I think it's really important to understand that early, and the sooner you get that, the better. So using the Alpha Center and heading down that path, it's a better approach. It doesn't have to be the traditional way of getting through this.
Yeah, and building your team, that's really important to look at both the track record, of course, of the professionals you're going to work with, but also I always say you need to trust your gut when you're meeting with someone because you're going to be working with them for a long time. And so be it a lawyer, a mediator, financial advisor, accountant, you want to make sure you're comfortable with the team. And that's how we work at Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation is we say you don't want to go through divorce with just a lawyer, right? So some people really do that. And a lawyer is not often a tax expert, an expert in finances, and certainly not a therapist. So particularly when you're dealing with children, you always want to have, hopefully, a therapist involved to help you think about what are the best decisions for kids. I didn't bring this up beforehand, but kids, how do you sort of relate to it when you're working with someone going through divorce and kids are involved? I don't know. How do you approach that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things early on, I think people need to understand that if there are children involved, you're never fully apart from that person that you're divorcing. You're going to have to work together for the rest of your life because it's just the nature of it. So understand that early on. As much as you want to run away and get away from this person and never talk to them again, if there are children involved, that's not going to happen. So getting people to understand that's important. It also is important for this entire process because then you're viewing this as I have a counterparty or another person that I have to work with to get through this. And I think that's important. And then I think the other thing that people need to start thinking about is building their parenting plan. What holidays are we going to have the kids? What days of the week work for work schedules and our life? Because the couple's going to have to make those decisions, and they're going to have to come to an agreement on that. So I think it's really important to start thinking about the children very early. I think a lot of people do approach it from the right direction, in my opinion. One of the things I typically hear in the first meeting is, we don't want the children to be affected by this. That's our primary goal. Usually I hear that one or two is the early goal that comes out. So it is a big piece to this, and it's important to talk through.
It sounds like, I don't know if it's from the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst training, but it sounds like a lot of the divorce process and what should be thought through, because we're obviously, our first step when we have clients that are going through divorce mediation and they have kids is sitting down with a parenting therapist and thinking about a custody schedule, a year calendar, a weekly calendar, and you brought that up, even though that's not your job necessarily. So it sounds like you really do sort of have all the pieces, at least some knowledge of the divorce process so that you can I guess it's good to know what you don't know so you can point people
Yeah.
in the right direction for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important for us. Again, we're not lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
but setting the expectation for the
Mm-hmm.
client.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not telling them, let's talk about your parenting plan, coming up with that
Right.
together. That's not our job.
Mm-hmm.
We're just setting the expectation that, look, you're going to have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You need to start thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to work together on this. So really, I guess what I took away from the training the most was setting the expectation, letting people know roughly, child support, alimony, division of assets. These are all the things you're going to have to think through, and they're going to have to be worked on.
Because you are often their first point of contact. I mean, I guess that sometimes people have lawyers and then they sort of find you after the fact that they're already starting the process, but just in case, so you can kind of give them the playing field and what they need to think of.
Yeah, what's been interesting, I guess, in the last 6 months is people going through a divorce are searching for a financial planner that can help them through it, which is really interesting to me. So 3 cases that I'm working on, they Googled a divorce financial planner, and I popped up in that area, and they called me. So I was their first point of contact. Then it's meeting with that person and offering some names for them to interview and make the referrals to bring in the team or team members. But it's interesting because I think consumers are coming around to the idea that I do need a team, and it's not just the lawyer.
Yeah.
I also think mediation and collaborative law are starting to take off. I think people don't want to fight and have it out, and I think it's interesting how consumers tend to shape our offering in any business, no matter what you're doing. So the consumer is starting to read more, they're on the internet, they're searching, they're starting to educate themselves more and not relying on a professional telling them this is how it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting thing that's going on.
Yeah. So I was looking at your website for Thrive is your company, right? A little bit. And on there you say the financial planning industry is broken. So can you just kind of talk about what you mean by that and how your approach is different from past approaches?
Yeah. Not to go too deeply on this one area, but recently the Department of Labor passed a pretty big ruling. And basically the ruling says that advisors on retirement accounts have to act in their client's best interest. That hasn't always been the case, which seems kind of funny when you hear that. It's kind of common sense. Well, what do you mean? They haven't done that in the past. They haven't had to act in my best interest.
Right.
But the reality is they haven't. It's been a suitability standard. So if you have an IRA, somebody can sell you an annuity. It might make sense for you. It might not. They just have to prove to the regulators that it was suitable at that time, not the higher standard that I'm your fiduciary. I have to act in your best interest at all times. I have a duty to understand your entire financial life and make those recommendations. So it's causing major waves in the industry. Annuity companies, insurance companies, they're very scared about this right now. They're going to have to change the way they do business. And I think it's a good thing at the end of the day for consumers. My company, we've never operated under a suitability standard. Legally, we have a fiduciary standard to our clients to always act in their best interest. We started the company 3 years ago, and I knew that early on that this is how I want to operate. This is how I want to run our business. So we made that decision that we're going to be fiduciaries. And I actually had licenses in the past. I dropped them because I don't need them. To sell annuities or to do other things that have a secondary guideline. So, to sum that up, the industry has been broken for a long time. Regulations starting to help things. I think it's a good thing at the end of the day. There is a potential downside that people with $25,000 or $50,000 will get no advice. because if they're not able to place a product for that person, they're not really going to speak to a financial advisor. So there's a real strong potential downside that the industry is going to have to think through there. But I do think at the end of the day, everybody operating in their client's best interest is really important, kind of like lawyers.
Yeah.
I've had to do it for a very long time.
Yeah.
So we're playing catch up.
Okay. That's very interesting. Thank you for explaining that. Want to say hello to the people joining in. We had a hi from Paris.
Wow.
So we have
Nice.
a worldwide audience here on Divorce Periscope, which is pretty cool. We want to encourage people to make comments or ask questions. Say hi from Paris if you want to. We're talking with Steve Erfle about divorce and finance. And we do these Periscope shows the first and third Wednesday evening of every month, talking about different aspects of divorce. My name's Matt Pillisher, and I'm an attorney and a mediator at the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. So we talked a little bit about the difference between heated litigation and amicable divorce. We talked about fiduciary duty. We also talked about how people's emotional states can affect their finances. Let me ask you, besides just searching the internet, which is a good way to find people to help you with advice for finances or a lawyer, how do you recommend that people search for a financial advisor?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the first things to think about is that type of financial advisor that you want to work with. So we just talked a lot about the fiduciary duty. So I'm biased because I'm in that camp, but I think that everybody should have an advisor that is a fiduciary in their best interest. So that's the first box to check. I think the next box is to look at this person's background. How long have they been in the business? How long have they been doing this? What designations do they have? So in financial planning, the CFP, Certified Financial Planning designation, is the highest standard. They're doing a good job publicizing the mark. They've had some interesting commercials. They've had a rock star. They dress him up as a rock star, and it's a real rock star. Then they clean him up, put him in a suit, and put him in front of a client, and the client hires him. So the point of the commercial is dig a little bit deeper,
Right.
make sure they have a CFP after their name.
Right.
So they've done a really good job promoting the mark. What the CFP is it's another organization that has requirements. You have to have at least 3 years experience. You have to go through, I think it's about 8 modules now, and then it was a 2-day test when I took it. And it has like a 55% pass rate, so it's not an easy thing to get. And I think that I wouldn't hire anybody to do financial planning that didn't show that effort, that initiative, that commitment to the industry. So I think having a CFP after their name is really important. Then you get to another question. It's the first question I tell everybody to ask. How do you get paid? It seems simple, but a lot of people don't ask it.
Yeah.
So how do you get paid? And the answer that's acceptable, in my opinion, is by you, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client. Here's my fee schedule. Here's the amount of money that you can expect to pay us. Here's how it's paid, and being very forthright with that answer.
Transparent.
Very important to me. I tell everybody, just ask that question first. The nonverbals from that person, if you see them kind of screaming or moving,
Shift in their chair.
you probably can end the meeting at that point, because it shouldn't be something that is behind the closed door. You have to open up with that. So I think that's important. I think another thing is to ask what the process is. You know, do they have a process? You know, how are we going to get from A to Z? How do you take me through that? What tools do you have to help do that? What's your staff like? What resources do you have to help me? Do you have any clients I can speak with? You know, client reference. You know, the reason I'm spending time on this, it's kind of frustrating but interesting that people spend more time buying a car than hiring a financial advisor. You know, they'll shop for months on the internet. They'll go to all the dealerships. They'll test drive all these cars. But if their, cousin says, I use this guy, they'll call him and use him without doing any research. You know, they kind of just go that way. So I think that's very interesting. But I think that some of those things that I just mentioned would be helpful for people to go through as they're hiring someone.
Those are great questions to ask of I think any professional having to do with divorce for sure. So let me ask you, if people were working with a financial advisor as a couple while they were married, what do you recommend people do in terms of, do they need to find someone new to help them go through the divorce? Can one of them use that person? What's the best way to handle that?
Yeah, I think what's best, like I said earlier on how we operate, is to start to bifurcate things. You're starting a new life. You're going to have a new team of professionals. I think it's generally a bad idea for the couple to stay with the same person. The reason being, no one person can pull themselves out of it from that. They're being compensated from those people. They have to keep them happy. So it's very difficult for that person to be unbiased. So there's a definite conflict of interest there. The other thing is it's hard to control information. As an advisor, you're getting it from both directions, and it's very hard to know what information will help their situation that I can share, and what information is off limits. I can't share that. So I do think it's best for the parties to use separate counsel, advisors, professionals, whatever you want to call it. But I do think it starts to be time where they have to move on and start using somebody different. With that said, one of the ways we operate is we do divorce work as a project. So we may not be the main financial advisor for that client, but they're going through divorce. So they'll come to our office and we'll retain them. Almost like a lawyer. So we will bill hourly, and we have a reduced rate. It's $150 an hour. We'll collect a 10-hour retainer up front, so it's $1,500. But whether they stay with their existing advisor at the end of this, or they hire somebody totally different, that's totally up to the client. So my role and my job is to really just help them through that transaction at that time. So it's a little different than I think how other advisors would work, but I feel really comfortable with that. I feel like there's no conflict of interest. Let's get through this. A lot of times at the end, they do wind up working with us long term, but that's not our decision or the goal from the beginning. You have to put that aside and get them through this transaction.
So for people who do you have people that have gone through divorce and then they come to you afterwards with, okay, I have this pile of money, I have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah.
Help. Do you have that?
Yeah, those are common.
Yeah.
It's financial planning is becoming more of an important area to think about in this process, but it's still not where it needs to be. Professionals still aren't where they need to be as far as helping the client, giving good advice, and building a team out. A lot of times professionals want to control the client. It's their revenue source, so they're not as willing to bring in people, which I think is a mistake. But yeah, a lot of times people will come to us, they'll tell us what their settlement is, here's what it is. We help them greatly because we understand the tax nature of child support, alimony. Now they have an IRA from a 401k that was divided through a Quadro, and we have to help them understand all of those buckets because they have different tax ramifications. And then we have to put them through the process. Here's what's your budget. Let's build a budget together. What are you spending? It's a painful process for most people, but very, very important. And it doesn't have to be painful. You can keep it at a very high level. But starting there and then starting to forecast their life, the score again, 0 to 99. We're going to give them a score and say, here's where you are. Here's your probability of success. If it's not good, then let's talk about changes. Let's talk about adjustments. Can you get part-time work? Are you willing to work a little bit longer? Can you reduce your expenses a little bit? Can you save a little bit more? It's not complicated. It's easy for people to understand. Financial planning is a give and take. But it's the first time they've had this conversation, and it's important for them to get it right.
I think it can be really scary to, have never really known what the budget is if you didn't control the finances, or if you had no idea about investments. It's really intimidating, and it sounds like you and your practice really try and be humble and compassionate and not shaming people, right? Because that's, I think, another thing is that people don't want to go to a professional that's going to look down on them,
No, the old days, you were told what to do. Better professionals today listen first. And I think that's really important. Part of our process that we've built, we call it the I Thrive life planning process. And the company name of Thrive, means grow, flourish, prosper. So we're trying to put a positive spin on the financial planning community. In the past, a lot of the language has been protect your wealth, downside protection, insurance, legacy, things that are kind of scary, So we've tried to use terminology to make people more positive about this experience. It doesn't have to be negative. I think at the end of the day, we help people grow their net worth, and that can be done in a lot of different ways. So in the I Thrive life planning process, the first step that we have is vision. And that's listening. That's for me to shut up, sit back, let the client tell me what's important to them.
So let me stop you there, and then you can keep going. It's not just the same that every person comes in and you want to make their money grow.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because some people could think like, okay, it's just going to be as simple as knowing where to put the money to make it grow the best.
Yeah.
You actually try and listen to what people's priorities are, their wants and needs, how much they want to work. I mean, what are some of the varieties of situations that you need to hear to make those decisions?
Yeah, so the first meeting is our vision step. So I sit back and I listen, and they're going to tell me, well, I want to retire. And I'll say, well, when? And then it kind of gets a little awkward and quiet. They're like, well, nobody's ever, well, yesterday is the answer that I usually get. But they haven't really actually thought through that goal. It's just a goal. Eventually I have to retire, right? Well, what does that mean? When? So let's talk about an age. Then even the harder question is, well, what would you do in retirement? People aren't ready to retire. A lot of times, even that age they tell me, they wind up working longer. It's a big step. Work is your identity for a lot of people. It's hard for them to give that up. There's a lot of emotion in that goal that needs to be talked about. Another goal, they might have children. They want to send them to college. So that's pretty easy, actually. You can figure out what the average cost of college is. You can figure out the age of their child, when they'd likely go. Other goals might be, I want a vacation home. Or I have to plan for a wedding. So we're going to get those goals out of them. We're going to dig deeper into when they want to do them and how much they're going to cost. So now we're starting to add the quantitative side to it. So in that vision step, it's really valuable to listen to the client. And then after we have their goals in writing, because we're going to put them in writing with the numbers behind them, we collect their financial data. Then we have a phase we call our awareness meeting. So the awareness meeting, and the reason I chose that name, it's kind of your gut check. You're finally becoming aware of the financial decisions you've made to date. What is the score? How am I doing? What's my grade? And in that awareness phase, we're going to take all their information, the hard financial data, and the softer, goals, and we're going to give them a score, 0 to 99, and tell them the probability of success. So we do that vision and awareness meeting before we ask to be hired. We're doing a lot of work up front, but it's very important to me to explain to people what real financial planning is, because the terminology financial planning is meaningless. The Allstate agent, not to beat them up, they do financial planning. They might just sell you auto insurance, but they're your financial planner, or they offer it out and say they do that. But real financial planning is more of what I just described, of really digging deep into this person. or couple. So then at the end of the awareness meeting, then we will say, okay, here's our client agreement. We've talked about the fee. Here it is again. Are you ready to move forward? If they say yes, the next step in the process is planning. So now we look at the score. What changes do we want to make? If the score is not good, what can we do to make it better? Sometimes the score's too good. They have a 99. They're not living life to its fullest. And that's a whole different conversation. But to me, it's just as big as a problem as somebody that has a 50, because there's more they could be doing. They're not maximizing their resources. Maybe charity. Maybe they're taking too much investment risk. They don't need to take it. You won the game. Reduce the risk that you're taking. Take more trips. Gift to grandchildren. There's a lot you can do there with that one. So that planning phase is fun. I love those meetings because you have a couple. It's the first time they're really thinking about this. They're thinking creatively. We do it in a live format, so you see the speedometer move, which is kind of fun. So I really enjoy those meetings. They're a lot of fun.
So not as dry as people may think when they think of financial planning. Okay.
So after just continuing the process, after the plan phase, we in writing have their financial plan mapped out for where they are at that point. The next step is implementation. So we're not going to give you a beautifully bound folder of here's your plan and say go have at it, because you go home and you throw it on the shelf and nothing gets done. So the art in this business is then taking that plan and implementing it and pushing the client, getting things done. So we pride ourselves on that. We think it's really important. And that's where you bring in lawyers, accountants, you bring in outside professionals to get things done for the client. And then the last step, just to complete the process, is monitor. Life is not just a straight line. If you fly from Philadelphia to San Francisco, you don't go straight. There's weather patterns, there's mountains, there's traffic. You got to move around. Financial planning is the same thing. Life changes. Divorce happens.
No one plans to get divorced.
No.
Yeah.
But when those things happen, you have to adjust. So in our monitor phase, we sit with our clients at least once a year to revisit the plan, make sure the score is still on path of where they should be. If not, let's talk about adjustments. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell.
That's great. That helps me, and I'm sure our audience sort of understand a lot more about what a good financial planner does or how they approach. So if you're watching us, we are Divorce Periscope, and we're almost done our broadcast tonight. We've had Steve Erfle with us from Thrive, and he's a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst. So we've been talking about divorce and finance. Our next Periscope show is going to be May 4th. So we do the first and third Wednesday nights of every month, and we're going to have therapist Dana Good on, who is going to talk about children and how to approach children through the divorce process. How do you think about kids?
Divorce.
Yes, thank you. We have Matt Piccirilli, who I'm talking to, the phantom behind the camera, who helps with the technical aspects. Follow us at Alpha Divorce to make sure, both on Twitter and here on Periscope. So let me just ask you if there's any last thoughts or topics you'd like to bring up before we bring this to a close. I think it's been very, very thorough.
No, I guess just to recap for everybody going through divorce, just know it's a process. Take your time, slow down, don't make any quick decisions. Start gathering your information, start a journal, start writing in the journal as you work through the process. Interview professionals and start building the right team around you. It sounds simple, but it's a reminder that you need to hear because it's so emotional, and you do need somebody guiding you and helping you through it.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve,
for
being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Tune in the next time. Take care. Bye-bye.